Hey everybody, this one is about how there are no Article 3 courts. Now, if you're not in the United States, then you can consider it a lawful court, okay? There are no lawful courts anywhere, basically, especially in the countries that have signed on to the Unidroit Statute under the United Nations, okay? And we'll go through why. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administering Your Public Servants. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the commercial paper, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. This last paragraph is for all the Satanist order follower revenue officers operating in their private capacity under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966. Anyways, there are no lawful courts, period. Okay? This can be applied in any country on the planet, especially countries that have acceded to the Unidroit Statute. Okay? There are no courts. There are only, bought and paid for clerks masquerading as judges who operate under United Nations statutes and Unidroit. There are only BAAL priests engaged in satanic religious ceremonies, causing as much fear and pain and suffering as possible, and they even have a name for it. It's called sploosh. Anyways, where a controversy is of such a character as to require the exercise of the judicial power defined by Article 3, jurisdiction thereof can be conferred only on courts established in virtue of that article, and Congress is without power to vest that judicial power in any other judicial tribunal or, of course, in an executive officer or administrative or executive board, since they are incapable of receiving it. And that's Williams versus United States, U.S. Supreme Court, 1933, citing American Insurance Company versus Cantor. Okay, 1 Peter 5:11. Okay, that is like the early 1800s. Anyways, that same case goes on. Okay, this page is all taken from that case. Both these two last pages. Okay. It is noted as significant that the act constituting the court dispenses with trial by jury, a provision which was distinctly upheld in spite of the Seventh Amendment in McElrath versus United States. With respect to the status of the court, the opinion concludes a duty to give decisions which are advisory only, and so without force, as judicial judgments may be laid on a legislative court, but not on a constitutional court established under Article 3. And so again, that's Williams versus United States, 1933. I recently went to the Supreme Court, and that was one of the questions, is because I took it from the Fifth Circuit, and I said that they're advertising fraudulently that they have Article 3 judges, and they don't have the ability to convene a common law jury, and so therefore it's a fraud. And under what authority are they engaging in this fraud? And now, if you go to the Fifth Circuit's website, I suggest maybe you want to go there, you'll find that they don't say anything about having Article 3 judges. It's amazing how that works. Anyways, so that's only one of the issues, okay? And also, another issue is that the decisions are advisory only, okay? They don't mean a hill of beans. And unless you bring it up, okay, then those BAAL priests are going to send their pigs out to assault you and sell you into slavery, and you'll have agreed to it under their satanic Roman cult Unidroit statute, okay? And so, again, this is all diabolically evil. These people are Satanists, and we're going to go in through the nitty-gritty details right now. This is Downs versus Bidwell, 182 U.S. 244, U.S. Supreme Court again. Eliminating then from the opinions of this court all expressions unnecessary to the disposition of the particular case, and gleaning therefrom the exact point decided in the East, the following propositions may be considered as established. Number one, that the District of Columbia and the territories are not states within the judicial clause of the Constitution, giving jurisdiction in cases between citizens of the different states. So the point that I want to make here is that if you're not in the United States, then it's all territorialism. okay? It's all territorialism. And so they are creating these territories, and they operate as an overlay over top of the de jure states, okay? And in the U.S., that's the same thing that happens, but in any other country too, okay? It's all territories, and they also call territories provinces. So point 3 is that the District of Columbia and the territories are states, as that word is used in treaties with foreign powers with respect to the ownership, disposition, and inheritance of property. Well, think about it, folks. What they're talking about here is the Satanic Trust, okay? The Satanic Trust, and we're going to talk about that further on, about the Satanic Trust. That's the slave that comes from the Roman cult, and that's what they're talking about. And so when the U.S. code in particular, but it can be in anyone, okay? When they talk about states, they're really talking about territories. But in the U.S. code, they'll say that this code applies in the United States and the states, and then it'll list the states: Guam, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, etc. And most people, the way they word that, these Satanists go and word it so that most people think the states is like Texas, and it's not. Especially the non-positive law statutes. I mean, they know how to word. Like if you look in the transportation code, no, actually, in the where they're talking about public roads. Okay, and I can't remember what code that is in the federal, but it actually talks about, it names the states. Okay, and it's very specific, okay? And so, but in like, for example, in Title VI, which is Homeland Security, or actually it should be more like Homeland Insecurity, and the immigration and all of that is only for DC and the territories. Anyways, and then 4, that the territories are not within the clause of the Constitution providing for the creation of a Supreme Court and such inferior courts as Congress may see fit to establish. Okay, so none of these courts are Article 3 courts. The only one that might be is the Supreme Court, if you can get them to operate in their official capacity in the United States. Okay, I don't know about other countries in that respect, but the Supreme Court, if you can get them out of their bail priest uniform so they're operating in their official capacity, then they might be. But the rest of them are all clerks masquerading as judges. This is National Mutual Insurance Company, the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, again, 1948. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. Okay, and that's essentially saying what this Downs versus Bidwell state case says, but it goes into it in more depth. And it says, in other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington, District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, that's military dictatorship, folks, nationally covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, and though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. So, again, if you're one of the slaves, then you get a military dictatorship. Okay, you're under a military dictatorship. There's actually 2 governments that are in place. One has all the limitations of the Constitution, and the other is a bunch of pirates. Okay, and it's run by Congress, and which is owned and operated by the Roman cult. And watch my video. Anyways, the international law rule. State statutes are actually federal statutes under the international law rule. It's adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction. And so think about it. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're under federal legislative jurisdiction everywhere. Federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only the statutory, but the common law of a state. State and federal venue discussed. The civil laws effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction are federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws. And a cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to federal district court, and they go through that, and that's immaterial. But so the point is, Well, first of all, this is taken from the Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President, June 1957, pages 158 through 165. Okay, so that's about a 400-page book. You can do a Google search for it and find it, no problem. Anyways, the point being is that all state laws, statutes are actually federal, okay? Because all they do is they regulate their slaves, okay? And that's it, okay? They do provide protection for everybody, we the people, but that's it, okay? None of it applies to we the people. It applies to the slaves is what it applies to. All people have the right to self-determination. This is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and this is basically how the Roman cult is controlling all these judges and turning them into Baal priests. Okay, through this International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, through the Unidroit Treaty, through the various treaties and conventions that the U.S. has signed into. But remember, if you go back to Downs versus Bidwell, it says that the District of Columbia and the Territories are states as used in treaties with foreign powers, okay? And so it only applies, all of that Unidroit, all of the Unidroit, all of the Geneva Conventions and all of that stuff only applies in the District of Columbia and the Territories, and they use the international law rule. If you're a U.S. citizen, it applies to you. Okay? Anyways, all peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic and social cultural development. That's Article 1. The state parties to the present covenant, including those having responsibility for the administration of non-self-governing and trust territories. Okay, that everything's under a military occupation, and so everywhere is a non-self-governing and trust territory. Just about everywhere. I haven't found anywhere that I couldn't show it yet. I'm not saying I can, that it is everywhere, but I'm saying that I haven't found anywhere that I couldn't show how it's under a military occupation. And if it's under a military occupation, then it's a non-self-governing and trust territory by definition. Anyways, shall promote the realization of the right of self-determination and shall respect that right in conformity with the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations, okay? And so that's Article 1, Clause 3. This is Article 2, Clause 1. Each state party to the present covenant undertakes to respect and ensure to all individuals within its territory and subject to its jurisdiction the rights recognized in the present covenant without distinction of any kind, such as race, color. You can see all of this being put into statutes, okay, just about word for word. Religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Okay, that's all Roman civil law, and they're converting common law rights into privileges is what they're doing. And if you don't figure that out, that if you're one of the slaves, then you don't have any common law rights. And anyway, so this is a cheap imitation of common law rights, is what it is. Anyways, to move on. Anytime they're talking about status, it's Roman law. An example of political status is the status of being a state citizen rather than being a U.S. citizen. This is the foundation of all statutes against discrimination, and it's all coming from the UN. And this is Article 2, Clause 2, where not already provided for by existing legislation or other measures, each state party to the present covenant undertakes to take the necessary steps in accordance with its constitutional processes with the provisions in the present covenant to adopt such laws or measures as may be necessary to give effect to the rights recognized in the present covenant. Okay, so it's all through all of this that they're regulating and controlling all these Baal priests in the courts, okay? That's Article 2, Clause 2 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Article 2, Clause 3, each state party to the present covenant undertakes to ensure that any person whose rights or freedoms as herein recognized or violated shall have effective remedy, notwithstanding that the violation has been committed by persons acting in an official capacity. See, and this is all regulating the Baal priests, to ensure that any person claiming such a remedy shall have his right thereto determined by competent judicial, administrative, or legislative authorities, or by any other competent authority provided for by the legal system of the state, and to develop possibilities of judicial remedy to ensure that the competent authority shall enforce such remedies when granted. And so, again, This is all a cheap imitation of common law rights, but they're all BAAL priests. And so if you try and get common law rights, you're not going to get them from them. Okay, you're going to have to go into this and show that it's their requirement. It's not yours, it's theirs. And so you can still get something, it's better than nothing. Anyways, the state parties to the present covenant undertake to ensure the equal right of men and women, so they get to assault men and women. See, at common law, the woman is the property of the husband, and actually that's a protection because then the women tend to be more timid, and so therefore, and I wouldn't want, my significant other to be going and fighting all these battles on her own. I'd rather do it for her. If she wants to, she's more than welcome to, but they lay awake at night with this stuff. And if I had children, I'd rather her be spending time nurturing the children, especially if that's what she wants to do. And so she doesn't have to lay awake at night studying this crap. The state parties equal rights of men or women to the enjoyment of all civil and political rights set forth in the present covenant. That's Article 3. At common law, the wife and children are the property of the husband and father. It is, however, true in all common law countries, has always and consistently been held that the wife and minor children take the nationality of the husband and father. That is common law doctrine. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights eliminates common law, okay? Well, it's all under a military occupation. And so that eliminates common law, okay? They got to get that nasty little common law problem out of here, because they're going to sell you into slavery, and we're going to show that in here. And so if they did that, they'd be put to death at common law, and we can't have that, can we? We want to make sure these BAAL priests get to come back and sell someone else into slavery. This is Article 4. In times of public emergency, which threatens the life of the nation and the existence of which is officially proclaimed, the state parties to the present covenant may take measures derogating of their obligations into the present covenant. See, and this is the kind of crap they put in there, because it's all they just throw it out the window. Okay, and so all they have to do is orchestrate some false flag operations, and now, oh man, we're in an emergency, we're going to take away all your rights. And really, that was the objective in the first place, is to take away your rights. And that's why they orchestrate the false flag operation. And so that's exactly what these Satanists do. And so you don't have, under this UN, there are no absolute rights. You're nothing but a slave. And it's all a slave mechanism. And then this is Article 16. Everyone shall have the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. So they get to assault you with their person, okay? And we're going to learn more about this person that they assault you with. No matter how nice they make their United Nations International Covenant, they always insert an escape clause with their false flags and their agent provocateurs and their bankster thieves. It's easy to create any sort of emergency they want to justify the denial of the privileges they're calling rights, okay? They're converting your rights into privileges is exactly what they're doing. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. There's my front page of my channel. There's the bell. The arrow's pointing to the bell. Click on the bell, and you'll be able to, pop-up will come up. You have to check the box and tell them you want to be notified about any new uploads. And this is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 26. All persons are equal before the law and entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. In this respect, the law shall prohibit discrimination and guarantee to all persons equal and effective protection against discrimination on any grounds such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status, okay? And so, again, you find that stuff in statutes. It's all over the place. Because they've gone and incorporated that into statutes. In any action in their kangaroo courts, you're going to have to bring up the issue of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and how you're claiming nothing under it. All of their courts are admiralty, where the so-called judge is actually a bought and paid for a clerk, and he's playing stupid. And if you don't say it, then it's not said, okay? These people are Satanists, okay? They are sitting there playing stupid. And if you don't say something that you need to say, then you didn't say it. Okay, they're not going to read anything into that. They do not want you to have any rights. They want you to be a slave, and that's their agenda. And they're going to do everything they can to dismiss that case and sell you into slavery. They're all Roman cult Baal priests and assault you with their United Nations treaties if you don't bring up the issue. You may want to mention Article 15. And this is Article 15. No one shall be held guilty of any criminal offense on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a criminal offense under the national or international law at the time when it was committed. And so again, it comes down to they're assaulting you for the crimes of that fraudulently fictitious Satanic trust that they created, okay? And this is an issue I'm bringing up in the Court of Appeals right now. And so it's not you. They're assaulting you based on this fraudulent fictitious Satanic trust. And so, and then the part 2 there, in paragraph 2, clause 2, it has their little escape clause. And so, anyways, that's what these Satanists do. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights is nothing more than a make-work project for their Satanist Baal priests. The Satanist order followers go out and assault you, kidnap you, and falsely imprison you. The Satanist Baal priest clerks masquerading as judges get to deal with it in their kangaroo courts. The Satanist order followers in the prisons get to generate revenue with their commercial prisons. The Satanist Baal priests get to break up families with their divorce courts. The Satanist Child Protective Services gets to steal children of their victims who are now in their commercial prisons. The Satanist Baal priest clerks masquerading as judges get to deal with juvenile delinquents that are created by Child Protective Services. The Satanist Baal priest clerks masquerading as judges get to deal with the juvenile delinquents that become the adult lifetime criminals. The whole satanic system forces people into their government welfare system. Okay, and so then, oh yeah, he's in a contract. We got him in a contract. He came because he was living in a cardboard box. And he came for some food stamps. We got him in a contract now. The only reason you would ever mention the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights is to say that the District of Columbia and the territories, that it is their requirement and not yours. And this is U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, to exercise exclusive jurisdiction in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state, which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, or other needful buildings. Well, I can tell you that in Texas in particular, the United States doesn't own any land, okay? And you remember, I don't know how much you know about Texas, but there's Fort Hood, which is one of the biggest U.S. Army bases. And so they have huge military installations in Texas, and they rent them all, or leased. And so technically, they shouldn't have any jurisdiction in there according to this. But they do, because of what the Baal priests in the Supreme Court have gone and reinterpreted everything because of the slave, the D.C. citizen slave. Chapter 854, this is an act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia, which was approved on March 3rd, 1901 by the 56th Congress, Session 2, 31 Stat 1189. And in Chapter 56 of that act, in Section 1617 and 31 Stat 1432, it says the legal estate to be in necessity use. Okay, and so that's where the Satanic trust comes in. Okay, in the 1800s, a trust is called a use, and a use is short for usufruct under the Roman civil law. Okay, this is all Roman law, and it all goes back to the Roman cult. This is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main, and it says, yet still, it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and the receiving the actual profits, while a season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. To be bound in conscience to account to assessed use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And so, again, this is all coming from the Roman cult. In 1835, the Satanic Trust was the foundation of modern conveyancing. The Satanic Trust was the creation of the Roman cult. In 1835, the courts of equity were run by the Roman cult. They're still run by the Roman cult today. The Roman cult wanted to make sure they get their extortion for their owned and operated Satanic Trust. When Congress passes an act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia, and it says that the legal estate is the Satanic use, they're essentially saying that the Roman cult owns the United States. That's 100% true, and it can be proven all over the place. I've got videos about it. This is more stuff taken from the D.C. Code of 1901 at Section 2, where it says, and be it further enacted that in interpretation and construction of said code, the following rules shall be observed, namely, third, the word person shall be held to apply to partnerships and corporations. And so it's all fiction. And in Section 252, located at 31 Stat 1230 in the D.C. Code, it talks about presumptions of death. Okay, so they get to presume you're dead. Everything is based on presumption, and so this creates the presumption that you're the Satanic Trust. That's exactly what they do, and so then they assault you with their Satanic Trust. Once you show up in their bail priest court, kangaroo court, they assault you with it and sell you into slavery, and that's exactly what they do. This is statutes equals contract equals Roman cult. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? This is Title 15, United States Code, Section 44, under definitions. Corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest, and any company, trust, and it goes through the same definition except it doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. The one that doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock is the Satanic Trust. Okay, that's exactly what it is, and so that this is basically their definition of a corporation, so they can assault you. And this is the Satanic Act of 1666 that was done in England in 1666. It's kind of interesting that it was that year. Anyways, the recital of the Satanic V's have gone beyond the sea, and the reversioners cannot find out whether they're alive or dead. And so, again, that gone beyond the sea, that's all an admiralty under the Roman cult, okay, contracts. And so that's what that's talking about. So everybody has gone beyond the sea. And it says here in 1, the Satanic V remained beyond the sea for 7 years and no proof of their lives. The judge in action to direct a verdict as though the Satanic V were dead. Okay, so they know that it's alive, or that you are alive, but they go and treat it like you're a dead thing. And that's exactly what these Satanists do. And the person so remaining beyond the sea or otherwise absenting himself were dead. Okay, the jury, they even direct the jury to do that. And so, again, it's all Satanic Trusts. Every taxpayer is a Satanic Trust, having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's in Bolins, 1912. And a summary of 5 pages of the congressional record from June 13, 1967, says that a citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive Satanic Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and US Inc. And so, again, it's all Satanic Trust. This is Ex parte Frank Knowles. It might be correctly said there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to be and called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the First 8 Amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. And the only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. That's why they want to assault you with their slave, because their slaves don't have any rights. They want to assault you with their slave, so then they can really assault you. That's exactly what these Satanists do. It is impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent a substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary subscription to license. All jurisdictional facts supporting claim that supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record of the court, and that's Pipeline versus Marathon, U.S. Supreme Court, quoting Cromwell versus Benson. They have to assault you with one of their so-called contracts. Whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. And what that does is that gives them, when you say you're one of the slaves, well, then that gives them the ability to go ahead and assault you, okay? Because they know that none of them exist, and so they can put you in prison for 3 years anyways. The term individual means a citizen of the United States or alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence. That's Title V, United States Code, Section 552A2. The term federal personnel means officers and employees of the government of the United States, members of the uniformed services, including members of the reserve components, individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the government of the United States, including survivor benefits. And that's paragraph 13. And so think about it. Anybody that has a social security number, okay, and if you have one, then you're a slave, because that's what that is saying. You're one of the slaves. I don't know about you, but I don't have one. I've been to the Supreme Court and told them I didn't have one, and it was no problem. It's a number of a Sesticate trust. Announcing a subscription-based YouTube channel called Sovereignty International. The recommended cost of the subscription is currently $1.99 because it avoids the advertising only. Originally, when I set up this channel, I was planning on having some exclusive content, and I'm going to have some, but there is very little on there now. There's a Arlington private information share, and there's a document or a video on how to do good, powerful affidavits. But that's it. Right now, I'm working on some more stuff, but it's going to take time. So in the meantime, the only thing I can really guarantee is it'll avoid the advertising. But if you want to use it to make a donation, it is certainly appreciated. It's a modest donation, but every little bit helps. And so it's certainly appreciated. I'm currently publishing 3 videos a week. That says 5, but it's actually 3. I'm running out. I don't want to be repetitive and say the same thing over and over again, and so I'm trying to find new topics, and I'm just running low on those. Anyways, some people had trouble finding the channel, and so the link to the channel is at the bottom of the page, and the link to the channel is at the top of the page. This is my front page of my channel. And some people sent me a $1.99 donation, and I wasn't sure if they wanted me to sign them up or what. I sent them an email back. They haven't responded. I guess it was just a donation. Anyways, the point is that I have absolutely no control over subscribers. I can't even see all the subscribers. And so if you want to subscribe, you got to click on that Start Free Trial button. YouTube is going to want some payment information of some sort, I'm sure. And I don't know beyond that. I have no control over that. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. The term citizen, United States, is analogous to the term subject in the common law. If any citizen or resident of the United States does not reside in and is not found in any United States judicial district, such citizen or resident shall be treated as residing in the District of Columbia for purposes of any provisions of this title to jurisdiction of the courts or be enforcement of summons. Okay, and that's found in Title 26, United States Code, which, by the way, is not positive law. And also the important thing is that this is the statutory version of that court case that said that the District of Columbia boundaries expand as necessary for U.S. citizens anywhere in the country. Okay. And now another little diversion, CubeYard.com. For great custom websites, domain names, and hosting, go to CubeYard.com. Use coupon code CY172 for 20% off your first order. CubeYard.com, your source for websites, domain names, and hosting. Anyways, and this is all under admiralty. The right to be represented exists only in an admiralty courtroom. That's Title 10, United States Code, Section 838A1. The accused has the right to be represented in his defense before a general or special court-martial or at an investigation under Section 832 of this title as provided in this subsection. So they assault you with one of their liars is what they do. And so we're going to learn a little bit about their liars. He is, however, in a sense, an officer of the state with an obligation to the court, and that's found in Book 7 of Corpus Juris Secundum, Section 4 on attorneys. His first duty is to the court and to the public, not to the client. Whenever his duties to his client conflict with those as an officer of the court in the administration of justice, the former must yield to the latter. And so all of these BAAL priests are trying to get appointed to be a judge, so they want to help out their judge buddies, and so they go ahead and sell their clients down the river. And so clients are also called wards of the court. And so a ward of the court is an infant or person of unsound mind, and their rights must be guarded jealously. Yeah, right. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. So they go and turn you into the ward of the court, and the ward of the court's an imbecile. And so they assault you with their liars so they can turn you into an imbecile and assault you with their jurisdiction. And we're going to see that here in a second. A ward of the court's an imbecile. A ward of the court is not competent. Everything is about competence and incompetence. That's why they're representing you, because you're not competent to make decisions for yourself. Therefore, the liar is going to make the decisions for you. There's no such thing as an incompetent sovereign. Do you know who you are? You get a letter, you get anything from one of these liars. He's essentially saying, that's a major compliment. You ought to take it as a compliment, because he's saying, oh, we got an imbecile here. That's exactly what he's doing. And this is in propria persona, taken from Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. In one's own proper person is a ruling and pleading that pleas to jurisdiction of the court must be pled in propria persona, because if pleaded by attorney, they admit the jurisdiction. So you cannot challenge jurisdiction with through an attorney. You have to do it yourself. Otherwise, they just ignore it. And so when they assault you with one of their liars, they just took jurisdiction is what they did. And if you're too stupid to figure it out, you just got sold down the river. And they sell people down the river all the time, and we're going to show you how they do it in this presentation. See bar members videos 1, 2, and 3. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They'd be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Eller to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. And so another little diversion, check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Roman Cult Slave Scam Series, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 3, Do-It-Yourself, How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service and the Draft, Martial Laws here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself No Sales Tax, Do-It-Yourself Traffic Stop 1 and 2, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail 1 and 2, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 1 through 9. So there's 2 states in every state, and you have to understand that. And so which one are you in? There's a lawful state and there's a federal territory. There's been created a fictional federal state of XXX within a state. See Howard versus Sinking Fund of Louisville, and that's citing a U.S. Supreme Court. And it's Schwartz versus O'Hara, which is citing the U.S. Supreme Court case. Anyways, this is Downs versus Bidwell. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privilege? The dissenting opinion in Downs versus Bidwell, Justice Marshall Harlan said 2 national governments exist. One to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, and the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. Okay, and so Congress is owned and operated by the Roman cult, and so you can see what's going on. Why do you think that Nancy Pelosi, that ditzy bimbo, as Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, says they have to pass legislation so they can see what it says? Hello? My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profiles are Sovereign Living and Sovereignty International. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. And my private group, Sovereignty International, is being deleted. It takes time to ban 17,000 people off your group because I'm not going to let Facebook profit from my hard work. They are engaged in censorship big time, and I am going to have nothing to do with them. They're all owned and operated by the CIA. I've got a video about do-it-yourself how to hurt Facebook. Anyways, my Yahoo private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. And follow me on Twitter at EngineerWin. When acting, see, now we're going to get into the meat, okay? This has all been a lot of preliminary stuff, and so now we're going to get into the meat. When acting to enforce the statute and the subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of the municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity, okay? Anytime there's a statute involved, they are clerks. They're bought and paid for. It's a contract. They're assaulting you with one of their so-called contracts. They do not act judicially. They're merely ministerially, but merely acts as an extension as a bought and paid for clerk for the involved agency. And a ministerial and not in a discretionary capacity. They're bought and paid for. It's the accepted rule, not only in state courts, but in the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes as a bought and paid for clerk. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks, as bought and paid for clerks for the involved agency. A clerk masquerading as a judge is not competent to do anything judicial like issue orders or warrants. A clerk masquerading as a judge is operating in his private capacity and has no immunity. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. It's a fraud. It's a kangaroo court. It's a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which a person's rights are totally disregarded, in which the result is a foregone conclusion because of the bias of the court or other tribunal. He's bought and paid for. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. It's a bill of attainder. Actually, it's a bill of pains and penalties because a bill of attainder is for the death penalty. It means a legislative act, no matter what their form, that apply to either named individuals or easily ascertainable members of a group in such a way as to inflict punishment on them without a judicial trial. There are no judicial trials. A bill of attainder is a special legislative act presiding punishment without a trial for a specific person or group. And a bill of pains and penalties is a legislative act, though similar to a bill of attainder, prescribes punishment less severe than capital punishment, okay? So they're all bills of pains and penalties unless they're going to put you to death. And then it's a bill of attainder. They're all bills of attainder. And no one is bound to obey an unconstitutional law. No courts are bound to enforce it. But they go ahead and do it anyways because they're Satanists. They're owned and operated by the Roman cult. They're Jesuits. The unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties. It affords no protection. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative as though it had never been passed. An unconstitutional law is void. It is as no law. And an offense created by it is not a crime. Okay, they're a bunch of thieves. It never became a law and was as much a nullity as if it had been an act or declaration of an unauthorized assemblage of individuals. And what they do is they go and put emergency clauses and they do all sorts of crap in their legislation now because they know it's not valid. And so they want to have an escape. They're operating in their private capacity. All oaths must be lawful, allowed by common law or some statute. If they're administered by persons in a private capacity or not duly authorized, they are quorum non judice and void, and those administering them are guilty of high contempt for doing it without a warrant of the law and punishable by fine and imprisonment. Now, that's cited in Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, but it's they're citing Book 3 and 4 of Coke's Institutes and the Laws of England, which goes back to the 1500s. Okay, so again, they can operate in their private capacity when they're not doing lawful things. Then they're automatically an officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. So when they're violating the Constitution, they're not representing the government anymore. They're a bunch of thieves and pirates. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right, for they are deemed to know the law. A judge loses his absolute immunity from damage actions only when he acts in clear absence of all jurisdiction or performance of an act which is not judicial in nature. When enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially and thus are not protected by qualified or limited immunity. Anyone who's wearing a military uniform is an agent of the Roman cult. The wearing of clerical dress or religious habit on the part of layfolk is liable to the same penalty on the part of the state as the misuse of military uniform, and that's Article 10 of the Concordat of 1933, which was signed between Hitler and the Roman cult. Almost all so-called governments are bankrupt and owned and operated by the Roman cult. At common law, a sheriff would have a star only and a judge would wear a business suit. At common law, there is no uniform. The following, we're going to look at some bail priests that I've been had to deal with. They're in the Northern District of Texas and the Arizona District and the Courts of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit and the Ninth Circuit. These are the whores I've had to deal with that I have pictures of, and I got the few that I don't have pictures of. That's Sidney Fitzwater, the whore, and that there's Joe Fish, the whore, and that there's Terry Means, the whore. See, they're wearing their bail priest uniforms. Samara Cummings, the whore. John H. McBride, the whore, has got his bail priest uniform. He's got that little smirk like he's going to stick it to you. Paul Stickney, the whore, and he's wearing his bail priest uniform. And Edith Jones, the whore, got her bail priest uniform on. And then there's the bail priests in the Supreme Court. You see them all wearing their bail priest uniform. And there's Jeffrey L. Curtin, who is a magistrate whore. Neil V. Wake, which was a judge whore. Reed O'Connor is a judge whore. Sam Cummings, a judge whore. Richard C. Tallman, a judge whore. Stephen McNamee, another judge whore. And this is the canon law. The Code of Canon Law talks about tribunals. And so that's where it's all coming from. It's all it is tribunals. And all so-called courts are tribunals, except a common law jury appears, a trial by jury, not a trial with jury, which is all you see nowadays is a trial with jury. All tribunals come from canon law, and they assault you with their satanic contract to sell you into slavery. And if you don't believe it, keep watching. These United Nations bail priests convert a court case into a commercial transaction, convert an Article 3 judge into an Article 1 revenue officer, bail priest clerk masquerading as a judge who's working for the crown and the Roman cult. And I don't care if it's United States, they're still working for the crown. I've got videos about it, how the crown owns the United States. They pay for errors and omissions insurance for the bail priest, the so-called judge, thereby alleviating him in any responsibility in the manner he's covered by insurance now. Make it so the bail priest, so-called judge, doesn't care what the outcome is. It nullifies the bail priest's oath of office in the matter, since all errors and omissions are covered by the insurance. And it converts a court case into a contract dispute in admiralty. That's why they want to assault you with their extortion. That makes it so the bail priest gets to collect a royalty in the case in support of his multi-million-dollar retirement. It gives the bail priest a special motivation to dismiss the case, to thereby encourage more violations and to create more business down the road. Yeah, he wants those order follower pigs to go out and assault people because it brings him in business. Creates business for his bail priest buddies in the courts of appeals. Creates the opportunity to leverage the fees by 30 times, since all courts are banks, to improve the balance sheet of their so-called court, and generates revenue for their Roman cult handlers. And some United Nations agencies that you see operating these days is Child Protective Services, family courts, all bar members are, and all Leos, all pigs, anyone in a military with a military uniform on. Now, that's not talking about peace officers if they want to be a peace officer, but there's not many of them that have a clue, have any more than a couple brain cells, so they don't even know what that means. All of these whores have the capability to operate as an Article 3 judge, but none of them ever do. They fabricate evidence of their U.S. citizen slaves so they can put the case into interstate commerce under the Commerce Clause, convert it to an admiralty proceeding, become a clerk masquerading as a judge, collect a royalty in support of their $1 million retirement, sit there and play stupid, and perjure their oath and get away with it because their oath doesn't matter anymore. This is a letter from Georgia Department of Driver Services, a 3-page letter. It's been sanitized to remove the whoever it was sent to. The important part, if you want to pause the video and read it, knock yourself out. But the important part is the stuff at the top of the second page here. And I'm just showing it here briefly. I got the text in another slide. It's signed by Jennifer Ammons, the General Counsel. The text that I want to bring to your attention is, it says at the top of page 2, it says, the statute, and it should say all statutes, creates a rebuttable presumption of residency for anyone who meets the following criteria. And then the criteria is immaterial, but it says, however, no such person shall be considered a resident for purposes of this chapter unless such person is either a United States citizen or an alien with legal authorization from the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service. Okay, so again, this all ties back to the Sestake Trust and the Roman cult. Okay, all of these statutes are for the Sestake Trust and the Roman cult. And UNIDROIT stands for the Unification of Private Law, which is law merchant, and the website says that 63 countries have adopted it, and it's designed to be automatically implemented. Canada and the United States have been signatories to the UNIDROIT Treaty for over 30 years. The UNIDROIT website says nothing about Texas or Arizona or any of the American states or the Canadian provinces. Therefore, the UNIDROIT application in the American states or the Canadian provinces is in federal areas of only, and that would be consistent with anywhere else as well, okay? And that's why they go and pass statutes like the Texas Business and Commerce Code so they can assault you in Texas with it. UNIDROIT covers negotiable instruments, civil procedures, secured transactions, legal status of women, maintenance obligations, contracts, banking law, and much more. And we're going to go to the website now. This is their website. We'll get in a little closer. Commercial contracts, cultural property, franchising. This is their website again. Notice the header, UNIDROIT International Institute for the Unification of Private Law, leasing, security interests, transport, banking law, capital markets. Okay, so when they go and sell you into slavery, they securitize it. They forge your signature onto a contract, securitize it, sell it on Wall Street. That's all talking about security interests. That's talking about banking law, and that's talking about capital markets. And civil procedure, that's all the bail priests. That's all the rules of civil procedure they assault you with. And contracts, okay, one of their so-called contracts, cultural property, franchising, insurance, hotel keepers, intellectual property, legal leasing, legal status of women, okay, that's all falls under these bail priests. Maintenance obligations falls under the bail priests. Movement of persons, negotiable instruments, okay, they always demand some negotiable instruments as payment. And so that's again the bail priests. The 1955 Benelux Treaty on Compulsory Insurance Against Civil Liability in Motor Vehicles. The 1958 Conventions Concerning the Recognition and Enforcement of Decisions Relating to Maintenance Obligations Towards Children. Okay, so this is all covered by UNIDROIT, and it's all tied into the bail priests in the so-called courts. This is membership. And the UNIDROIT statute has, at the time that I printed this, which is 2014, had 63 states had signed on to it. And you have Australia, Canada, most of South America, most of Europe, China. We have Russia, United States, and United Kingdom, and again, most of Europe. And so all judges are actually bail priests masquerading as judges. Their black robe is their bail priest uniform. You saw a black robe bail priests in the ones that I showed you. They routinely deny anything related to justice from happening because it's so good for business. They encourage their false flag operations and their agent provocateurs because it's so good for business. They encourage police state murders, assaults, kidnappings, thefts because it's so good for business. Everything they do is a fraud and a lie because they're Satanists. Okay? They have to commit fraud. An act to enact a uniform commercial code for the District of Columbia and for other purposes. That's located at 77 Stat 630, Public Law 88-243, and the United States is located in the District of Columbia. So a U.S. citizen is a citizen of the District of Columbia. Think about it. That's exactly it right there. The United States is located in the District of Columbia, and so a U.S. citizen is a citizen of the District of Columbia. There are no common law offenses against the United States, okay? So that means that all statutes, right? It's everything is in statutes. Everything is they assault you with their statute, okay? There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes, okay? So that's all martial law. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. It's all martial law. Texas legislature can create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. It's all martial law. It's all statutes, and they want to assault you with their martial law. Everything's in admiralty. A root of error doth not lie upon a sentence in the admiralty, but an appeal, and that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, under the definition of admiralty. But they're citing Book 4 of Coke's Institutes and the Laws of England, which goes back to the 1500s. Okay, so that's why it's called an appeal. Okay, that's why it's called a court of appeals. It's the same thing that precipitated the War of Independence. This is taken from the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms in 1775. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice-admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. And so that's military dictatorship, folks. So that martial law eliminates common law. They got to get rid of that little common law problem, because they'd be put to death at common law for doing what they're doing. And the people are too stupid to figure it out. And this is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. And he says basically the same thing, except he says it in a slightly different way. And so what he says is, in the meantime, civil law was the form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what's called equity in its place. And so he's basically saying the same thing as they said in the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms. And that's why these BAAL priests can sit there in their kangaroo court and say, I can do anything I want in here, and they'll be 100% right, okay? Because it's satanic. They're going to sit there and play stupid. That's why it's all satanic. Equity is actually talked about in the Bible, and if equity follows common law, then it's good. But when there's no common law, then it's satanic, because they can sit there and play stupid and sell you into slavery, and that's exactly what these Satanist BAAL priests do. And we're going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about penal actions and words that they like to use about penal and offenses, okay? A penal action is an action on a penal statute and an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Where an action is founded entirely upon a statute, the only objective is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. Remember, this is all statutes, and so the judges is a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge. He's a whore. He's collecting a royalty. He's not neutral or unbiased. He's a bought and paid for clerk. The words penal and penalty in their strict and primary sense denotes a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement, okay? So they assault you with one of their little contracts. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. And so again, they assault you with their sesticate trust is what they do, and then and so there's actually several contracts that they assault you with so they can get away with this, and but it's easy for these BAAL priests to do that. They sit there and play stupid, and under martial law they get to play stupid and pretend you didn't say anything. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute, and the only object is to recover a penalty or forfeiture imposed as a punishment for a certain specific offense, while a remedial action is one which is brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is a civil suit brought for the recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. That's why they call all these people in their commercial jails offenders. Such actions are civil actions on the one hand, closely related to criminal prosecutions on the other, to actions for private injuries in which the party aggrieved may by statute recover punitive damages. Again, these people are Satanists, okay? They assault you with one of their so-called contracts. That's the reason that this BAAL priest can sit up there when you nail him down and ask him, what's the nature of this case? He'll say it's quasi-criminal, okay? He doesn't want to say it's a civil action because theoretically a civil action, and all they can do is take your property. But he doesn't want to say that. Statutes equals contract equals Roman cult. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? So when that BAAL priest sits in that court and asks you if you are the name, okay, because they know that it's a sesticate trust, and they know that you're not the sesticate trust, and so, but they want to get you into their little contract. But individuals, when acting as representatives of a collective group, cannot be said to be exercising their personal rights and duties, nor be entitled to their purely personal privileges, whether they assume the rights, duties, and privileges of the artificial entity or association which they are agents or officers, and they are bound by its obligations. And that's Braswell versus United States, 1988, quoting United States versus White, 1944. So again, what they do when you say that I am the name, then you just bought into it, okay? You get to be the slave. And they're selling you into slavery, and we're going to see that in a few minutes. Whenever the Uniform Commercial Code creates a presumption with respect to a fact or provides a fact is presumed, the trier of fact must find the existence of the fact unless and until evidence is introduced that supports a finding of its non-existence. That's UCC 1-206. Remember, we said Unidroit covers civil procedure, and Unidroit covers the Uniform Commercial Code. All of these courts operate under their satanic Roman cult, and all of them demand IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? The Uniform Commercial Code equals Unidroit equals Roman cult. In an action with respect to an instrument, the authenticity of an authority to make each signature on the instrument are admitted unless specifically denied in the pleading. So what these Satanists do, that's UCC 3.308. They forge your signature onto a contract, and if you don't know that's what's going on, then they're going to sell you into slavery. They're going to securitize it and sell it on Wall Street. There's people that have found their criminal cases after being in jail for 10 years. They found their criminal case at Fidelity Investments. These people are Satanists. The following rule applies in an action on a certificated security against the issuer unless specifically denied in the pleadings. Each signature on a security certificate or a necessary endorsement is admitted. If the effectiveness of a signature is put in issue, the burden of establishing effectiveness is on the party claiming under the signature, but the signature is presumed to be genuine and authorized. Okay, again, UCC 8.114, evidentiary rules concerning certificated securities. They're forging your signature onto a contract and selling you into slavery and selling the certificated security that they created on Wall Street. That's exactly what these Satanist BAAL priests do. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? These Roman cult Satanist bar member whores masquerading as a judge forge your signature onto a contract and then presume it's authorized and authentic. Who's going to call a judge a liar? That's how they're populating the prisons. Carl Lentz brought up the issue of forgery against CPS when they stole his son in his successful one-page lawsuit. See the Judicial Whores video. He, the prisoner, has, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law in its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. Okay? That's what they do, is they sell you into slavery. And at common law, they got to get rid of that nasty little common law problem, so because they can be put to death for this. And if a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and make merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. And thou shalt put evil away from among you. That's Deuteronomy 24:7. And so we, the people, need to be taking care of business in this matter. These people need to be put to death. That's exactly what needs to happen. And until we do it, we are going to be held accountable. And there's millions of people in the jails right now that are being held accountable to this day because of their ignorance and because of their not taking care of business, okay? They're obviously not Christians, they're Satanists. International law is a subset of canon law. International law started with the Roman cult. Unidroit stands with the International Institute for the Unification of Private Law. Unidroit is located about 100 yards from the Holy See. Unidroit controls and governs the Uniform Commercial Code. Through Unidroit, the Roman cult has seized control of all courts. The Roman cult's bar members are already officers of all courts. See Bar Members 1, 2, and 3 videos. The United Nations is owned and operated by the Crown and their Roman cult handlers. See the Crown is owned and operated by the Roman cult video. See the United States is a Crown colony and the Crown owns and operates the United Nations 1 and 2 videos. Unidroit's coming from the United Nations. See the Roman cult slave scam 1 video. United Nations maintains the international law collection, which is also coming from the Roman cult. They're using the Roman cult's international law rule to assault us with their fraudulent, fictitious Sestake Trust U.S. citizen slave. That's exactly what's going on, folks. There's no real courts. These are all BAAL priests. They're all clerks masquerading as judges. They cannot do anything judicial. If they try to do a judicial act, it's a fraud and a nullity. It's a void judgment. Watch my void judgments video. All decisions are advisory only. They're Satanists. All they do is fraud and lies. They are pirates. They are terrorists. Terrorism, a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation, okay? That's exactly what they are. They're busy pointing the finger elsewhere to keep the attention off of them. And that's what these Satanists are doing. They are Satanists. They are terrorists. They are the lowest form of life there is. And we, the people, need to take care of business. Okay. Anyways, that's my testimony. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you spread the word. I hope that on Judgment Day that you're not held accountable. And I hope that I'm not held accountable. This is my effort to make sure that I'm not held accountable for the blood and sins of this generation. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.